I met this man, I met the First Lady of New York. I understand their hearts, I understand their minds, I understand the vision they have for the city. And I can tell you that that is a vision that I embraced. The decision that I have made about that position is, however, a decision I can no longer sustain. I am breaking an agreement between adults to honor an agreement and a pact I have with the children of Miami.
After being blindsided by an about-face by Miami-Dade County Public School Superintendent Alberto Cavallo, Mayor Bill de Blasio has now filled the vacancy left by Carmen Farina. Richard Carranza comes with experience. Along with running Houston schools, Carranza also headed a school district in San Francisco, and in both cities, Mr. Carranza faced his share of challenges and critics. Here in New York, he will certainly face even more. According to the Department of Education watchers, Mr. Carranza's most important job is to keep the city's trend of improvement in city schools going, a legacy left by Chancellor Farina. Joining us with the inside track on what to expect is the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randi Weingarten. Randi, welcome to the program.
It's great to be with you.
As someone who's very well-versed in knowing all of the different intricacies in the school districts around the country, what is your take on Mr. Carranza?
He's a great guy. I know him from both. I don't know him from Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
I know him from both San Francisco, when he was a deputy, and then the SOUP, and then Houston. But we really have worked together very intensively this year because of the hurricane. Mm-hmm. And when I say he was a great guy, you get tested in these kind of disasters, and it's pretty quick that you see people who have a soul versus people who don't. And what I saw, and Texas is a very tough place. And what I saw with Richard is that he worked hand in hand with parents, with our folks, to not only get schools open, because schools really become places of stability and nurturing in times of intense disasters like a flood or hurricane, but also made sure, knowing the history of Katrina, to get the schools that couldn't open into other buildings quickly so that none of the vultures would be around trying to snatch them. And then also worked with our union there, who was kind of like center stage, trying to figure out how to help people, get people out of homes, get people off of roofs, things like that. I mean, it was really horrible in Houston for a while and during Harvey, as you may remember. Making sure that people, that the educators and the kids in the district were helped as much as possible. And when I say the educators, I'm talking about from the school bus drivers to the school custodians to the teachers.
So then, and that is an incredible depth and breadth of experience that he's bringing with him. But how does he bring that to New York? How does that fit in a city like New York and help the schools continue to improve? Mm-hmm.
So there's I just talked about his soul as an educator, and people have been saying that he seems similar to Carmen, and my apologies for calling them their first names, but these folks, those of us who have toiled in this field for a while, you get to know these folks personally. So both he and Carmen are educators who really understand multilingualism and bilingualism and the needs of kids who are come from all sorts of diverse backgrounds. That's really important because he understands that there's no one size fits all, but there are strategies and best practices that you need to focus like a laser on places that are struggling. And then you need to be able to assess places that are doing well and what kind of supports you need to do to kind of prod them or prompt them or push them along. So, he already said, the first day, I was very pleased to hear him say this, that community schools and thinking about neighborhood schools with wraparound services that become centers of community and centers for families, something that, New York is doing already. I'm really proud of my local union in New York City. You know how biased I am about it, but I'm really proud of them for opening, 24 now, I think 30 of these community schools. You see the results there. But thinking about community schools is really important because what Richard understands is that there's like 3 or 4 strategies, whether a district has 1 school or a district has 1,000 schools. There's 3 or 4 or 5 strategies that if you invest in, you're going to make schools, you're going to help schools become great places of teaching and learning for kids. One is focusing on kids' well-being. You have to meet kids where they are, not where you want them to be. Hopefully you get them to where you want them to be. Number 2, powerful instruction, project-based instruction, all sorts of other instruction. And that's where his depth in ELS and in bilingualism and multilingualism is really important. Number 3, teacher capacity building and teacher voice. And number 4, creating cultures of collaboration and community. And I think he's pretty well versed in all of those things. In San Francisco, he was an instructional leader. In Houston, he started thinking about, or he was thinking a lot about how you build the capacity of the workforce. He frankly settled the case of the invalid evaluation systems that operated in Houston, the value-added system. We had brought a lawsuit against it. It was indecipherable, and he actually settled that case, understanding that evaluation has to be about how you improve practice, not about how you not about a gotcha or how you test people. And so I think that he can handle New York. Houston is a very diverse and very complicated city. And so he knows scope and scale. And I think he can handle New York. I think he can handle the focus. And I think he will have his priorities in the right place. Doesn't mean, there's not going to be trip ups, and it doesn't mean there's not going to be stumbles, and it doesn't mean there's not going to be fights. That's, what happens in New York. But I do think he's a really good, sound, strong superintendent instructionally. And as I said to you before, I think his soul is as deep as the summer day is long.
Randi Weingarten, thank you so much for joining us on the program and telling us some of the things we didn't know about our new school superintendent.
Take care.